Ms. Potter, will you please rise? Given all these considerations and having carefully considered the comments of the family and of both Daunte Wright and the comments of Kimberly Potter, as well as the arguments of counsel, it is the sentence and judgment of this court that you shall be committed to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 24 months. You shall serve 2/3 of that time, or 16 months in prison, and 1/3 on supervised release, assuming no disciplinary offenses or conditional release violations. You have credit for 58 days already served. Restitution will be reserved. There'll be a fine of $1,000 and a surcharge of $78 to be taken out of prison wages or due within 180 days. You must provide a DNA sample. You may not use or possess any firearms, ammunition, or explosives. You have the right to appeal the conviction and sentence. If you are unable to pay the cost of an appeal, you may apply for leave to appeal at state expense by contacting the state public defender. You may be seated, Ms. Potter.
No words.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a new edition of Real World News TV. I'm your co-host Reggie Kearney, and my other co-host Sherry Taffy is with us tonight. And you just saw, I don't know, Sharon, how you doing tonight?
I'm about to go on a tirade. So, as we described in our show description, if it's not abundantly clear to people who are watching the news and reading the court documents, it's obvious to anybody paying attention that we have two justice systems in America, one for white people, and particularly the affluent, and another one for people of color, especially Black Americans, our community. One system that allows armed insurrectionists to attack our Capitol with cursory punishment, as far as I'm concerned, and one that gasses and beats people for defending Black lives and civil rights. One that can jail a man for decades, for life, for stealing $50 from a bakery, and another that feeds a child Burger King after massacring 9 people in a church. One that attempts to criminalize Black Lives Matter and other civil organizations, and one that continues to ignore the fact, which has been reported by the FBI and federal organizations a number of times, that white supremacists are infiltrating law enforcement, the military, and pose a greater domestic threat to us than any other organization in the country, where armed militia can go and stand over elected officials, locked and loaded with no repercussions, but Black men and children are shot in right to carry states for having toy guns, where judges are sympathetic to defendants and pull all kinds of shenanigans to result in them getting acquitted or a slap on the wrist. And I'm sick of this. And I don't want to call it a narrative, because that suggests that it can be interpreted another way. And this can't. The facts are the facts. And there are two types of justice systems in this country. And I'm just getting sick of this storyline being repeated. And that said, of course, the impetus for tonight's show was to talk about what you've just seen, and that was the sentencing of Kimberly Potter. I think it was ridiculous. I think it was an insult. I don't think that she truly heard what the Wright family was saying. And she got off with a slap on the wrist. And if she tries to contest this, depending on who she gets, she might wind up with even less time. And I would bet dollars to donuts that this is the type of individual who, despite what the judge just said, will have arms in their home, will continue to carry. What are your thoughts, Reggie?
Well, hopefully she won't, because have arms in her home, 'cause that can cause a lot of problems for her. But one thing we got to look at throughout the country, whether it's a black judge or a white judge, depending regardless of what the case is, judges are given through the state law, federal law, they're given a leeway to determine the sentences. Okay, I mean, we even saw how she sentenced Chauvin when he was sentenced for killing George Floyd. She could have gone higher, and he needed really to. He took a life. He should have been given life. But again, she dropped the years down. I think what he got 17, 21 years served, maybe 16, 17 years. He's out. Okay. Then, this case with Potter, the prosecutor wanted 86 months. She comes back with 17, 16, 17, 18.
How is that a happy medium?
It's not. It's not. In her eyes, it's a happy medium, okay? In our eyes, we call it BS. Because like I said earlier before we started the show, I'm surprised she didn't just give her probation. Because she wants to put into context her what so-called exemplary career. Okay. Yeah, she didn't have no problem. She was a trainer and everything. But regardless of how her career was, she killed a young man. Okay. Go back to the day that young man was killed. You can't tell me she couldn't tell the difference between a gun and a taser. And she was looking at what was in her hand. So why did she either turn the gun another direction or turn away from the young man or do whatever? She knew she had a gun in her hand. And you can't tell me that she didn't. Okay? So like I said, the judges have they can go either way they want to go. They can go up. They can go past the guidelines and stick it to a person, or they can back off of them and you know uh, be lenient. And she's been lenient in 2 cases so far.
I feel like, Minneapolis and Minnesota, I mean, they clearly have issues, and as many states do. And, I don't know if the prosecutor's heart was in it. I didn't get to watch any of the trial. Um, but I've said this before. I think police officers and elected officials should be held to a higher standard. They know the law. They're trained. They're supposed to be trained for high stress situations. It's surely not the first time she felt the need to pull a weapon, and it's just a slap on the wrist. I'm just disgusted with this, and the Attorney General says that he hopes that Potter takes an active role in becoming a part of the solution that prevents future deaths. What kind of smoke is that? Like, what does he expect her to do? I believe she's a coward at heart. I don't think she's going to become a community activist seeking to help reform the police in her state or her county. I don't think that's going to happen. So, like, these just empty platitudes, and I'm just disgusted with it.
Well, 9 times out of 10, when she finishes her sentence and her probation, she'll probably move from the area. And I guarantee you that she's not going to stay in the home she's in now that she's been in for years. She will move to a more secluded area where she won't have to deal with the public. But I mean, it just shows throughout the country how police officers are not held to the same standard we're held to, and they just get lenient sentences when they do something that's wrong. I mean, it's just not. It's not like I said earlier. Let's not think that it's only white police officers that are breaking the law. We got black police officers breaking the law. I mean, you just had a young man in this area. The family is suing Prince George's County for $75 million because The incident, the black officer put a knee on the young man's neck, and I guess the young man tried to jerk away from it and broke his back. Uh, he died recently because of he was in his wheelchair, and he got caught up in a situation where some people were using guns, and he got shot. He actually died from those wounds. But the thing was, he was already wounded from the police force, and he was in a wheelchair. So I mean, no charges were. Don't think any charges have been brought against the officer yet for abuse of, for force, using force on the young man. But it just, I mean, that blue wall, it needs to be taken down.
I'm curious to know what her other judgments have been in criminal cases, because she specifically says, there's 4 criteria when she's thinking about incarceration: retribution, incapacitation, deterrence, and rehabilitation. And I want to know if that formula was used in other sentencing, or if she was just snowed by the tears, the fake tears that this woman cried on the stand. And if they were real tears, she was crying for herself, not for her mistake, and not for Daunte Wright. I'm just so sick and tired of this.
Well, it's a scenario that's going to continue to take place. It's not going to change. I mean, it's not going to change. Like I said a couple of shows ago, the police department in Minneapolis needs to be, shut down and rebuilt. The mayor needs to resign. They need some real police reform out there. The city, when they had it on the ballot as an initiative last year, the city, people in Minneapolis voted down, closing down, tearing apart the police department. It needs to be torn apart and rebuilt. I mean, it's got a lot of issues and got problems. And, if you don't cut the head off the snake, it's going to continue on being a problem. And I see more problems coming out of Minneapolis.
And what's so short-sighted of all of these racists and closet racists and the passively racist who don't see it as a problem for them yet don't understand that for every inch we give these police officers and these bent and twisted judges, it just brings things closer to them. And I'm sure it happens to members of their community as well, not as egregiously as it happens in ours, but if this is allowed to continue, it's going to be nationwide. None of us are going to have rights. You have cops right now who are trying to force their way into apartments and homes without a warrant. Cops who are on the doorstep of people's homes, and either they are ignorant of the laws that they're supposed to uphold or they don't care. And it seems like it's a national problem, and it might be particularly bad in Minneapolis, but it's going on all over the country, and they're getting away with murder quite literally. And it's just a matter of time before it's their son, their grandson, their nephew, or whatever. And then, as we often see, once they become conscious of the fact that it's something that affects them, that's when they complain. That's when they want reform.
And the thing about it, that when it comes to reform, they get all bent out of shape because we ask for reform. They want to resign from the police department. They want to retire. They don't want reform. They want to be carte blanche. They want to do what they want to do, and they don't want
power
to fight up what they do. And that's how they see policing. Why police us? We know what we're doing. We're here to protect you. All right, you're not here to protect me when you're breaking in people's houses and you don't know the law. You stop somebody for a traffic ticket, and you ask for the license first without telling them the reason why you stopped. And then if you ask them why you been stopped, they keep talking about, I need your ID. I need you to see your ID. Don't question me. That kind of stuff. It's just the power, and when you compare our police department to maybe European police departments, these guys here just have too much power. You don't have these other problems in like Great Britain and other countries, the European countries. The guys in Great Britain don't even carry guns. They have a strike force. If they need someone, they call for that force to come in and be used. Unfortunately, years ago, a police officer got his head chopped off because they had to wait for the force to come in, the strike force to come in. But that's how they operate. And they don't have the problems we have here.
Yeah.
These guys here just have too much power. Individual power, because when you look at police departments, you have to look at each individual city, whether it's a major city, a mid-level city, or a small rural city. Each department operates differently. And you talking about having state reform or city reform, you need to have nationwide reform of the police department.
Absolutely. I just I don't understand why there isn't a national standard for the police department. Like the issue of no knocks, legal in some states, not legal in other states. Right to carry, same thing. I just it makes no sense to me, none whatsoever. And how can it be not against your constitutional rights? It's just a hot mess, and it'd be easier to reform if there were a federal standard.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at the right to carry, this is something that has mushroomed over the last maybe decade. You can hear about people having a necessity to carry a gun. It just bounces back to the NRA taking this. And, that's why I said the first thing that needs to be done. The Second Amendment needs to be reformed. I know people get mad when I say that, but the Second Amendment needs to be reformed because the thing about it was this is something has just come along over the last decade, probably. And like I said, where people just got to have guns. They got to have the right to carry a gun. They got to carry it openly. They got to carry it concealed. We're becoming a wild, wild west in a modern era. Okay, where people just got to have guns.
Well, after Obama was running and after he won, we saw a significant uptick in people buying guns because the right and the Ukraine and Russia and all of the misinformation was convincing people that Obama was going to create an all-black guard or militia or something like Trump's brown shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought that he was going to spur on the race wars that they fetishize since they lost the South.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't surprise me that gun ownership has gone up. And as a result, it also doesn't surprise me that we've had more idiots shooting people in road rage, threatening people with guns in grocery stores when they don't get what they think they're entitled to.
But the problem is, when it comes to guns, and when we look at what's happening with guns, and we're getting a little away from the subject, it's a community thing because everybody's got to have a gun now, whether they're black, white, Puerto Rican, Greek, whatever. Everyone wants to have a gun. Problem is the militias, like you said, they were afraid of Obama, so these militias popped up secretly. But when this other guy got in the White House, they just came out, and they're not going away. They're not going to go back in their cubby holes and hide. Because he's opened them up.
And I can understand being a gun owner to protect your home, but walking out in the street with it, you're asking for trouble. You're looking for trouble. You want an opportunity to feel like the Wild West hero or whatever. I mean, just look at those guys with was it Aubrey? What was his name? The jogger?
Ahmaud
Arbery. They went out with intent, armed with both their trucks and guns.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just something deeply wrong with this country. But back on topic, I don't understand where there's so many instances where there is a disparity in the sentencing between groups of people in this country, why more judges aren't being investigated, how two people can commit the same crime and one gets 20 years, one gets 2 years in probation.
Because it's the judge's prerogative, and that's what the problem is.
I understand that, but they can still be investigated if they're showing bias.
You can't, unless the prosecutor has a overwhelming issue with the judge, or the defense lawyer has a problem with the judge, then there's not going to be an investigation if they are staying within guidelines. Okay, let me give you an example. USC years ago, I think you might remember when a young lady got raped, okay? And the judge came back. At first, he gave the young man a sentence, I believe, and he came back and wiped out the sentence, okay? That's an issue that needs to be investigated, because you need to see where that judge, what kind of pattern he's created over the years as far as not following the sentencing guidelines. Because it was like he was being a male chauvinist by not giving the guy time, okay? He wanted to say that, look, yeah, something happened, but this young lady might have been at fault also.
And he had his whole future ahead of him.
Yeah, so he wipes him out, okay? So in that case, if I was a prosecutor, yeah, I'll be wanting an investigation. I'll send her name on up to the judicial board, and hey, let them investigate it, okay? Now, when you say you've been on the bench for years, and that might be another issue, because I know here in Maryland, I think a circuit court judge has 15 years, district court 10 years, things like that. You might need to start looking at the length of time. But as long as they are in the ballpark with their sentencing, they can do pretty much what they want to do. Yeah, the prosecutor can ask, but you don't see prosecutors going, to appeal sentences, okay? You just don't see it happening. They might not like the sentence, but a lot of times they'll just deal with it and go on, but it's just that it's just too much leeway. They've given that leeway, and it's up to the prosecutor. And in that case with Kim, the prosecutor shouldn't even have to try the case. The video told the story, okay? It's just like with Chauvin case. Okay, prosecution put on an excellent case. He should have gotten life, but again, she goes below the sentencing guidelines. Okay. Now, what you can also do too, you can just look at her and take it and break it down, make a graph of how she handles black cases versus white cases, and just see what she's doing. But is there still enough to get off the bench? No, it's not. And that's the whole problem. We're always going to have that problem, with the court system,
And I was thinking about jury nullification, but there's never enough of us allowed on a jury to nullify it.
Right.
So
right.
How much has really changed? Whenever I see a jury, there's one or two of us on the jury, and I see that as the token selection, so that they can say, look, we have diversity on the jury. But I don't recall instances where there's an all-black jury, or 90% or 50%.
Well, I think, what did OJ have? Did OJ have predominantly black jury?
I don't recall, but I didn't agree with, the cops screwed up that case with planting the fake evidence.
But see, this is the whole thing. He got off, okay? So, the system can work. It work in our favor.
If you're affluent.
Yeah, it can work against us, but it worked for him, because
because he had the money.
I'm gonna tell you, the prosecutor messed up by asking OJ to try that glove on. Come on, let's think scientifically. If this glove has been drenched in blood and it's leather, when the leather dries, it's going to dry up too small, okay? And plus,
well, not just that. Well, true, but not just. I mean, that other cop, Furman, was busted for planting evidence, so that called everything into question. If he had just kept his shit together, we would have had a real trial. But that skewed everything. So,
I mean, the justice system stinks. I mean, I was looking at a CBS morning show over the last couple of weeks. A gentleman down in New Orleans, not New Orleans, but Louisiana, just got released from prison. Went to prison. He spent 44 years of a 100-year sentence in jail. innocent. He always said he was innocent. But what they did 44 years ago, the two girls, I think they were 14-year-olds, one got raped, one didn't, and there's a whole lot to it. But when they had him in the lineup, he was the only person. They showed a picture of him in the lineup 44 years ago. He was the only one in the lineup that had handcuffs on. So the news guy, the reporter asked her, but did you pick him out because he had handcuffs on? And she said, yeah, because supposedly they never saw the face. Okay, so he's been released. You know, that whole thing is they were racist too. You know, I mean, these two sisters, they twins. They were racist then. They're racist now. The only thing they could say, well, we got 44 years of his life. Yeah, you got 44 years of an innocent man's life, because during that time, all the evidence wasn't given to the defense team. A lot of stuff was covered up by the prosecutor just to win a case. Police officers. It was the South during that time, okay?
And it wasn't just to win their case, it was to imprison a black man and not catch the actual guilty party. So that rapist was, if a rape truly did happen, was still out and about.
Well, the thing was,
by their hate.
The thing was, a lot of it points back to the girl's boyfriend, who she'd been messing with for years. This guy they'd been messing with. He stuck. They tell the story. People away from the case tell the story where he probably stuck the other sister in the trunk to hide her while he had sex with the younger sister, and he forced himself on her. You know, but their parents would have killed him. So what they do, they frame a black man. And a lot of cases are coming to light now. When you talk about justice system, a lot of cases are coming up about now where a lot of black men are getting released because of how the case was handled by the prosecution and the defense. You know, it's just coming to light.
I feel as though it should be an automatic given that these individuals receive monetary, what's the word I'm looking for?
Retribution.
I guess, but you know, they're how old now? The time to gain a career is past.
Yeah, he's 70 years old. Right, when he got released last week, he's 70 years old.
So no pension, no 401k, no career. What's this man going to do? His life is ruined. So automatically he should be entitled. Thank you. Compensation was the word I was looking for. Whenever they find that somebody is innocent, and on top of that, it would have been discovered sooner if evidence hadn't been buried. Yeah. Those cops, that judge, that prosecutor, if they're still in operation, should go to jail. They should get monetary compensation so that they can live the rest of their lives in comfort.
But with this case, the guy can't get it because this is how they left the case. Like the judge who dismissed the case said, look, and the prosecutor declined to retry the case. The evidence was screwed up, okay? In order for them to exonerate him, he would have to go back through another trial, okay, to be found guilty or innocent. Like the prosecutor said, he doesn't even have the information to even try the case again. You know, he said, and the judge even said, I can't say you are guilty or innocent, but what I can say is they withheld evidence that could have shown that you were innocent. Okay?
That should be enough. That should be the threshold.
But it's not, because
I know
the thing is, it's not. So this man, he gets zip. If he sues, he has to go back through the whole trial process to prove himself innocent.
Right. Just another hurdle that they put in place to avoid, their comeuppance, to avoid responsibility.
It's not so much of them. The sisters are saying they won't testify, and they're not going to change the story.
Well, they can't now.
Yeah, so you got two old 54-year-old racist women that aren't willing to tell the truth. And that's what the whole thing is. In order for him to receive what he needs to receive, his just reward, these sisters have to come out and say, look, he didn't do it. And they're not willing to do it. But they're happy that they got 44 years of his life.
That and the other gentleman that I mentioned earlier who was arrested and given a life sentence for stealing $50 from a
Mm-hmm.
bakery. A life sentence. And if not for this judge in 2019 ending that sentence, his ass would still be in jail for a $50 theft.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, you have somebody here who shot someone, who killed someone, who
Mm-hmm.
had the skill, the knowledge, and the training to do and know better,
Mm-hmm.
getting off with 2 years.
Well, look at the case in California. I believe it was one of the western states with a truck driver, because of the way the laws are, he had all these individual charges, and when they found him guilty, which he was guilty, he ended up getting almost 200 years. And the judge had to go back and readjust it, because what happened, the sentencing guidelines, because of the number of people that were in the accident and were killed, and all the other people that got hurt through, and through his negligence, all the charges added up to 200 some years. And the judge said, "Look, you can't put nobody in jail for no 200 years." I mean, he had to will this sentence down and make adjustments, and unfortunately, he still got 10 years. He was speeding, his brakes gave out on the truck, and yes, he was
How do
guilty.
you go from 200 to 10?
Because the thing about all that, you can't. Sometimes you have to use common sense.
Just give him life. Just
Yeah,
call it a day. Give him
yeah.
life.
But the thing is, it was just a whole bunch of charges. Okay, I mean, like the brakes going out was not his fault, but the speeding that led up to the accident was his fault. So they had to justify it somehow. So that was, the prosecution agreed to it. Then the family members, they were like upset. The family members felt like he should have spent 200 years in jail, which realistically he wouldn't, unless they found out a new medicine in jail to keep him alive for 200 years. But they were upset. So you get people, from both sides of the spectrum are going to be upset about the way the justice system is, But would the justice system ever be fair? Heck no, it's not going to be fair. We're going to keep seeing these injustices as long as this world is here. Now you go into the Muslim countries, where the laws are cut and dry. It is what it is. You steal something, put your hand out there, and let's go ahead and take that hand off so you won't use it no more. Okay, everything is cut and dry here in America. Where you have freedoms at, things are unfortunately, it's a give and take situation. But the judge is the person who creates the give and take situation. You know.
I just feel like our system, aside from the blatant racism and misogyny in it, I
Mhm.
just feel like our system is so antiquated and unreliable. And that here we are, 2020, and we haven't figured out a way to get to find a way to get to the truth.
Mhm.
It's all still subjective. It's all still, um, it's like a game of chess, what you can get
Mhm.
away with in the court. Is the judge on your side, like with the Kyle Rittenhouse case?
Mhm.
Is he going to stretch and pull the bounds of what he's allowed to do as a judge, or she, to do what they can to minimize the potential sentencing on the defendant or rule in their favor? It's just, and unfortunately, the thing that comes to mind is our two stupid movies, Judge Dredd and um, was that movie Future Crimes or something like that, where they're able to, see the crime before it happens or whatever. And I know that's ridiculous and outlandish, but can we improve on lie detectors? You eliminate the expense of a case if you can demonstrate with a lie detector beyond any reasonable doubt
Mhm.
that somebody is guilty or lying or obfuscating or hiding the truth. I, I'm just sick of relying on human nature, because in this country, it's becoming blatantly obvious that these people aren't even freaking human
Mhm.
with the decisions that they're coming with.
A jury of your peers.
But they're
You know.
not. But they're not. They're not.
But okay, in some instances it works. Okay, when you look at the Ahmaud Arbery case, then you look at the verdict that came down today for federal hate crimes. There are times when it works, but with us as in Black America, we have to sit back like we're watching a basketball game to see if we're going to win this game or not. And it shouldn't be that way.
Mm.
It should be when something happens, we should be able to walk away from and say, yeah, they're gonna find them guilty, and they find them guilty, they're gonna get the maximum sentence. Okay, I'm gonna tell you something. The only reason them three idiots, racist idiots, were convicted was because of the film, because the video. Now, if it had been established that they shot him in cold blood and there was no video, believe me, they wouldn't have gotten life. Okay,
Oh yeah.
they would have gotten some time, but not life. Okay, because what would have happened? Somebody would have turned on somebody, and that's how the case would have been won. But you saw this young man actually being killed. Okay, and then with the federal government, they pulled all the emails, all the tapes, and all this kind of stuff. Now, the white lawyer wanted to say today, the defense lawyer wanted to say today, well, they didn't call no black people as witnesses to say they were racist, and they didn't need to. Their white friends told the whole story.
Seriously, from 10 years ago.
Yeah. So, but what she was trying to portray was, if black folks didn't hear them talking this yang, then they weren't racist in the eyes of blacks.
That's bullshit. What kind of backward logic is that? These people didn't associate with blacks. They didn't like them. So how are they going to have black friends to testify for or against them? That's ridiculous. Also shows you how cowardly they were, that they didn't have the courage of their convictions to say that shit in front of people they weren't prepared to murder.
The system is jacked up. I mean, it's never going to be it's never going to be a fair system. I mean, the best thing you can do is just keep your butt out of trouble, because the court system, if you're black or you're a person of color, the court system is not going to be in your favor. And it's not.
I was looking for comparative purposes. A case that happened a few years ago with Officer Noor, who shot Justine Damond. This happened in 2017. And, I looked his name up, and the only references I could find to him in the news feed were recent articles about the Potter case, comparing it to his sentencing. When I looked up her name as a victim, all of the newspapers came up. So I went on to Wikipedia, and the very first sentence finds it necessary to identify her as Australian American and him as Somali American. So immediately the first sentence is sort of painting a narrative in the mind of the reader, whatever position they're on. But in that case, from what I read, they were responding to a call. They got to the area, and there was a loud bang next to the car, and then she shows up at the window. So there was a heightened sense created by that situation, and that's how she wound up getting shot. Now, unfortunate, horrific, and all of that, but they showed him absolutely no mercy, no compassion. That whole think of deterrence and what was it that she said? Retribution, incapacitation, deterrence, and rehabilitation. That wasn't taken into consideration when he was being sentenced. And he was initially sentenced to 12 years for third-degree murder, which was overturned by the Minnesota Supreme Court. And then he was given 4.75 years in prison. Now, he was a model prisoner, if you will, and they tried to get a sentence further reduced. Now, in Minnesota, inmates who behave well typically get 2/3 of their prison sentences, and the remainder is supervised release. But the judge had the caucasity to say, I am not surprised you're a model prisoner, but I don't know any authority that would make grounds for reducing your sentence, when it clearly exists in Minnesota state law. So this subjective bullshit, and I'm sick of it. I'm just sick of it.
It's very subjective. So if you go to court, you better go to court on the day. You hope you get a judge that had a good night's sleep, okay? Because judges use all. I mean, the lawyers know what judges they want to go before and what judges they don't want to go before to try a case. And they will try to make sure that if there's a judge there who's Mr. Law and Order that's going to kill that client, they will try to stay steer clear of that judge, okay? If it's a judge who's known to, he's not good in the morning because he's grumpy, they will move away from that judge. They know the tendencies of the judges and what they will do, okay? They already know that, and that's a chess game that they're playing in the court system.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be chess. It shouldn't.
Yeah, it's sad. It shouldn't be. It
It's not.
shouldn't.
It's
Yeah.
not a game of spades. It's not chess. It's facts.
Yeah.
And when they start playing with the facts and footloose and fancy free with what evidence they'll allow and not allow. Now, obviously, if it was illegally obtained, I get it. But again, when you look at it nationwide, it is not applied universally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need to.
Okay. You take the young lady who was killed in Louisville. No, not one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you look at the state's attorney, the attorney general for the state of Kentucky, a black guy, with aspirations to move up in the Republican Party. That stunt of his was a political stunt, and he should be ran out of Kentucky because those officers killed her, and they should have been held accountable. But he wants to justify it. Yeah, it was a no-knock warrant. Okay, the lawyer, the cops felt threatened because of the boyfriend. He did everything he could to justify the cops killing her. Okay, and that was wrong. It was clear cut. Okay, just like the young man who got killed a couple of weeks ago, that was clear cut. Okay, like they said, he bought that gun for protection. So it shouldn't matter to them that he was sleeping with the gun. That was none of their business. He had the right to have that gun, sleeping with it, hanging on his face, plastering on his face.
That's the thing with no knock, though. Yeah. There's no opportunity to say, hey, knock, knock, do you have a license to own a gun?
You go in there with a bulletproof vest on, okay? And this whole scenario, that guy, the officer who did the shooting, it was 10 seconds, okay? 10 seconds. 10 freaking seconds. He couldn't wait another 10 seconds while they say, hold up, put the gun down to give the guy the opportunity to wake up. They couldn't duck down, fall on the ground, or do whatever to get out of the way of the line of fire.
No, because we're disposable.
It's a whole lot they could have done that would have kept that young man alive. Okay, if they just moved to the left or to the right or fell on the floor.
You really have to question your line of work and your oath of office. If you spend so much time manufacturing stories and narrative to justify the action that you did, which is wrong. Mm-hmm. How can you justly call yourself a police officer meant to serve and protect? Putting aside what we know about the Supreme Court ruling, which says that police officers are actually not under any obligation to protect us. How do they not feel like roving gangs?
Well, they are roving gangs.
Well, I know they are, but how do they not feel that? How do they feel justified calling themselves an officer of the law when they spend so much time manufacturing evidence and scenarios to justify the murders that they're committing habitually? They're no longer police officers. They're no longer officers of the law. They're just gang members wearing blue. Mm-hmm. with carte blanche, get away from jail free card to get away with whatever they want.
And that's what they do. That's exactly what they do. They get away with murder, and I hate to say this, and I think before this thing is all over with, you're going to see more officers, and I hate to say this, you're gonna see more officers getting killed because of the actions of other police officers. And you're gonna see an attitude in the country, which you already see. You're gonna see an attitude where people just really don't respect police officers no more.
And then they complain about it and make themselves victims. Be better in your community if you want to be respected.
And like I said, all the officers aren't bad. All officers aren't bad. You just got a few, bad apples that make it rough for all of them. I mean, like I said,
I think it's more than a few.
Well, I'll say a few because, you got a lot of good officers out there. I know,
but they're not standing up.
Well, the thing about it, if you stand up, you will get blackballed. Okay.
They need to create their own wall of blue, if you will.
Yeah.
And stand up to all of this crookedness. It's ridiculous.
If the
We've got
wall,
cops. So what? Over the last 6 months, we've seen cops get arrested for sex trafficking, for selling drugs, breaking innumerable laws, and this isn't front page news.
yeah,
This by itself doesn't force a federal requirement to investigate these municipalities. Like, it's ridiculous. Why don't we just all become police officers?
that
Yeah,
wouldn't
that'll
work.
solve the problem. We could shoot each other willy-nilly. It wouldn't matter. We can get away with it then,
Yeah,
right? Because we're
that that
covered.
wouldn't that wouldn't work. But the thing is, it's all about you're going to have to have a national reform of the police departments, and that's what you're going to have. But as long as you have all these red states, these congressmen and senators from red states, it's not going to happen. And that's another thing. The politics plays into it, especially in these red states where, you know, they're gonna pretty much do whatever they want to do. Now here in Maryland, we were able to get a good, a good bill passed that reforms the police departments throughout the state. And like I said, a lot of guys got mad and they quit, and retired. So what? So be it. If you want to be a good police officer, then you need to go through some retraining and reform, and not be afraid of that. That doesn't diminish your ability to police the community. It's just that we want you to wake up and do things the right way. And so we were able to do it. But the same new law that we got passed in Maryland, believe me, it'll never get passed in Texas or any of those red states. It's just not going to happen.
They keep saying, I feared for my life. I feared for my life. Well, maybe if you have the support of your community and the respect of your community, you wouldn't be quite that fearful, because they would be there to help you out as opposed to kick you when you're down
Yeah.
or protest against you. Again, have people who live in the community police that community. Instead of living in another state or another county, or in the wealthier burbs or whatever. Um, yeah, but no, it's not a problem it seems like anybody wants to fix anytime soon.
Mm-mm. Like you said, not until their family members start getting killed. Let one of their sons or daughters get killed by a police officer, then all hell gonna break loose, and they're gonna want to make the changes and reform that they need to make. It's just like with when the Black Panthers got strong and they started walking around with guns, rifles. The Congress came up, with a ban on handguns, ban on guns in public, and all this kind of stuff. When all that subsided and went away, and the Black Panther Party went away, then all of a sudden, Second Amendment rights. Okay, we need a right to carry a gun. We need a right to do this and do that. Let me tell you something. The Black Panther Party came back today, okay, and started banishing weapons and act like they're gonna knock and gonna kill some people, gonna kill some white people. Congress and the Senate would come together so quickly to put a ban on these guns. It would be unreal because it would be all about protecting their communities.
You say that, and one thought that keeps going through my mind is, obviously with every one of these situations, well, if that was a Black person, this would have been different. Same thing with the insurrection, same thing with Kim Potter, same thing with Amber Guyer, or whatever her name was. When you think about, do you remember, I don't know, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, no, it was before Trump, or maybe it was during Trump, when you had the militia go to the state capitol. I don't remember if it was in Minnesota or what state it was. They went into the government building and were standing around elected officials fully armed. If an organization of color tried to do that, they wouldn't even make it up the steps.
No, they would say, put the guns down. And if you didn't put the guns down, you got shot. It was in Michigan where that
Michigan,
happened.
yeah.
It was in Michigan. But that's just the way they think. It's one form of gun rights for whites, and there's one form of gun rights for blacks. And the gun rights for blacks is none. Okay? Because they fear a black man with a gun.
They even fear their own Black men on the police force with guns, as often as they go to undercover events and beat up their own, who shows them ID and says, I'm a cop, and they keep doing it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, the justice system is never going to be fully equal. It's going to, and judges will continue to mesh out punishment that we're not going to agree with. I mean, I don't know. She got some time. Was it the right amount of time? No. But she was found guilty. But, so where do we go from there? It's jacked up. The blue wall would never come down because if the blue wall was going to come down, the three police officers that were Chauvin, they would have pushed them off of George Floyd, and George Floyd would still be alive. And they would have dealt with, and they could have been men enough to deal with the issues that were going on within that department where they would have been blackballed. So you were blackballed. Let it be. So be it. So I don't know what Rose said. Where all the black cops when all these shootings are going on, making coffee. Yeah, the police force is segregated. They pair blacks with blacks. You don't see that many blacks and whites riding together in the car. I mean, it's just a whole different ball game. It's still a white man's form of work. That they want to be seen and they don't want us to be seen, and they want to make all the rules. And that's what it is. So. And she's right. If you look at all these scenarios, you don't see black cops around when all this stuff is taking place.
This is very true.
Yeah.
And I mean, we know what Cheryl Dorsey, right?
Mm-hmm.
We interviewed her many years ago, and she had attempted to either stop somebody who was engaged in excessive force or report it. I don't remember the exact circumstances, and she got fired. So we do know that this happens, and you've seen a lot of black ex-police officers in the news sporadically over the last year, I would say, making statements about quotas and racism in the police force. So,
and that's how it works in all businesses and industries and professions. Blacks are put on the back burner, and it's still pictured as this is the white man's country, the white man's world. And I was looking at MSNBC, and this scholar was on there talking about how what's going on in America now. Whites are very fearful of becoming minorities, but at the same time, if you look at it, they already are minorities. He said
they're a global minority.
Yeah,
so even the white man's world statement to me is it's laughable. When you look at the sheer number of people of color throughout the globe, including Asian.
If you look at the world, if you look at this country now, it's driven by minorities, whites, Hispanics, people of color. That's what drives this country. But they still want to be in the majority. They want to run things. And that's what's happening in these red states. They are able to carve out these districts that benefit them, and they're getting things done that they want to get done.
Sometimes I wonder, as you've mentioned in the past, if returning to some form of segregation would be best, but
it's too late now.
Yeah, I'm not for that.
Yeah, it's too late because it's just too late now because things have changed. But my thing is that I think blacks need to become more conscious of what's going on in this country, and I think that's where we fall short at, not keeping up with what's going on and knowing how our community is affected. Like I keep telling people, the conservatives are using the Board of Education as a tool to gain control of the schools, and because all of the Board of Education races, for the most part, are nonpartisan. So you don't know if the person is Republican or not. But when that person gets in office, or a group of them get in office, they tend to try to take over the school system and run the Board of Education like they want to. Quick case in point, this lady here in my area was running in my district, and I'm gonna tell you, she's a first-time person running for Board of Education, but she used 3 little words that got her butt in trouble: CRT. Nobody went on her page and cussed her out or anything like that. They just told her that they couldn't vote for her because of her view of CRT, but she didn't even know what CRT stood for. And they just said, no, we don't want a person on the Board of Education that's going to dictate to us what our kids learn and don't learn. And
But meanwhile, these idiots they don't know what CRT is, and they
yeah,
lump all studies associated with African American
yeah,
history with it. So you can't even teach about Martin Luther King anymore.
right. But she went so hard at the people went so hard at her. The next day, she resigned from running for the board of education because she didn't understand how to run in politics. Then I look on the news last night, and they're talking about hitting our area for Nate Sweet with the truck convoys. And this one guy was coming down from Pennsylvania Wednesday, and the reporter asked him, "Well, why are you protesting?" Well, high gas prices. Okay, I understand that high gas prices. Mandate on wearing masks. Okay, I understand that. And then he said CRT. This fool who said CRT, he's a tow truck driver, tow truck company owner. He don't even know how to spell CRT. Okay, but it's a buzzword now. So now they hear the buzzwords because a Youngkin down in Virginia used it to win the election. Now that's the buzzword.
Please. They don't see color. Racism doesn't exist, but they don't want us to be a part of
Talk
history.
about it. Yeah,
It's ridiculous, even if it's just ridiculous.
yeah.
We
Washington
were
Post has a good article on a black teacher in Virginia who was trying to figure out how to teach Black history for the month of February without violating the executive order that Youngkin put in place.
How do you do it? You can't.
That's it. How do you do it? So you're
So,
gonna make these announcements before we go. Good conversation tonight. You gonna make these announcements?
so our producer Tony Breedlove wanted us to mention that HTTRTV has moved to Saturdays, so you can eat your popcorn and binge watch on Saturdays and enjoy. And then Troop Brothers will be on Thursday night, 7 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Central, and I think she messed that up, 10 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, 10 p.m. Eastern.
All right, then. So, 1 minute left. Tony's not going to come in on us. She's taking a mental health day. So we'll be signing off on our own. But we'll hopefully have better news to discuss next time.
Yeah, hopefully we have something fun to talk about on the news next week.
Well, like I told you, I reached out to the young man that we met
on
TikTok.
Yeah.
And he's got something called the Bristol Project. I can't remember the full name of it, but he's on this wonderful journey of self-discovery and doing really in-depth research, looking at census reports and newspapers and ownership, land ownership, and tracing back his family history. And he actually met the great-grandson of the family that enslaved his family.
Well,
so it's been very interesting.
I have the plantation list for my family. A whole bunch of Kearneys, boy, I tell you, and we have we've connected. A lot of us have connected through that. Different sets of Kearneys. I'm going to a family reunion in Newport News this summer with a offshoot of the Kearney family. But I was surprised at the number of. He had quite a few slaves, and he gave him a name. The only problem I've had is identifying it was two Black men that had the same name when it comes to my great-great-grandfather. So trying to figure out which one my great-great-grandfather is the only thing. But other than that, it's fun. It can be a fun expedition to go through your family history and see how far you can go back.
Yeah, I started this years ago and then had to put it down because I got really busy with other projects. But Tappins litter the globe. I think we're on every continent, and there are Tappins that are so far removed from the Caribbean that they are literally now white and don't know that they're from the Caribbean with Black ancestry, and but they still have the same names, first names and last names.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating.
So,
I'll see if I can get them on the show.
Yeah, do that. That'd be fun. Okay. Well, you have a good rest of the week. Everyone out there have a good rest of the week. Enjoy yourselves. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. Let's pray that it does.
Yeah.
Good night, Sharon.
Good night, Mr. Kearney.
Talk to you later.